2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur. I'm Dave, this is Boris, and we are here to continue our Stephen King phase of continuing with films that have been dealing with the Shining, with a film that is not much more than a year and a half old, from 2019, called Dr. Sleep, which is directed by Mike Flanagan, I believe. And it is based on the 2013 novel of the same name. The film stars Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, and Kylie Curran. So, I'm just going to read something from IMDb, what this film is about, and then we'll go into our first impressions. So, years following the events of The Shining from 1980, a now adult Dan Torrance must protect a young girl with similar powers from a cult known as the True Knot, who prey on children with powers to remain immortal. The thing to realize about this film before we go into our first impressions is the fact that this is a direct sequel to the 1980 film directed by Stanley Kubrick. That being said, what was your first impression of Dr. Sleep, Boris?
Well, I must say the movie was quite exciting. I really enjoyed it. It was suspenseful, more or less from the beginning to the end. Except, I must say, I don't like the ending, especially because I know it's for some reason they radically changed it from the way it's in the book. And I haven't read the book, but based on what I read online, I think the ending in the book is much better, and I don't see why they changed it here, and that's my main issue with the movie. But aside from that, I can't say I didn't enjoy it. I did, but yeah, the ending was a bummer.
Well, my first impression was a little bit different, mainly because of my history with the novel, history with the Stanley Kubrick Shining, and now this one. Now, this particular film was fantastic to me, because it was something unexpected, because someone who directs this film and then ends the film the way that Stephen King wanted The Shining to end the chapter of The Shining. That was fucking amazing. That was fucking awesome. I know that you didn't like the ending, but I am a fan of that ending because that's the way it was originally supposed to be in the first place. And I understand why the director went and took because it was the ending that Stephen King hated from the original film. So it was kind of like a fuck you to Stanley Kubrick, and I'm glad that it was kind of, because to me, Stanley Kubrick is an asshole. I don't think that he's as great as they say he is, and what he did to the original actress in The Shining is unforgivable to me. No matter whether people want to say that he was a great director to work with or not, And that's maybe my opinion. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a fan of Stephen King. But that being said, um, what are your thoughts on my thoughts on the film so far?
Well, as far as Stanley Kubrick goes, I agree with you. Yeah, after I heard what he did with the actress and everything, and how much he butchered up Stephen King's work, I agree. He was an asshole, and I don't really have a very high opinion of him myself. But I don't quite see uh, uh, how they supposedly fought him back by changing the ending of Doctor Sleep.
Well, because that was the ending that was supposed to happen with Danny's father. In the original novel, it wasn't all crazy. He in the original novel, it ended like the miniseries did, where Danny's father forgot one thing. He forgot to set the boiler for the day, and he went down, and his true self came out, and he told Danny to run, and he saved the family by having them go out at the same time that he was stopping the boiler, and the whole thing exploded. That's the way the novel was supposed to be, and this was the answer. And I think the final conclusion I think it had to be done that way in this film, because well, just because Stanley Kubrick got it wrong and Michael Flanagan got it right.
Yeah, although I must say that I, as a writer, if I was the writer of Doctor Sleep, and if someone made a movie and changed the ending so radically, I wouldn't be happy about it. I don't
Well,
know what
you,
Stephen King
you
thinks,
you
but
know what he thought? He thought it was great. He thought
hmm,
it was the answer to solving the riddle of the 1980 film. It kind of like made everything okay in his mind. I mean, that's what he said. I mean, he basically said that this is the ending that it should have been, and I'm glad that you ended it this way. I'm the one who wrote
uh,
Doctor Sleep, so I should know. Even though I wrote it differently, and those are some of the things that he had to say about this film. He was honored that he thought to do that. I mean, to me, that was the ending he wanted to begin with, and I'm okay with
uh,
that.
well, yeah, but I mean, that's the ending that was supposed to be in The Shining, not in Doctor Sleep.
But if you think about it, Doctor Sleep is actually part of The Shining. It is a second it is the second chapter in the Shining story. It is connected, and Stephen King wrote it. So, uh, that being said, he ultimately has the final say so, at least in this day and age, of what can and can't happen in his films. For the most well, in film adaptations, he has more rights than he did then.
Well, yeah, that much makes sense. Well, I guess if Stephen King is satisfied with the changes they made, that's okay. But like I said, if I was the writer and if someone radically changed the fate of one of my main characters, I wouldn't be happy about that. But oh well.
Well, let's take a look at the adult Danny as a character. What did you think about Ewan McGregor playing uh, the character of adult Danny Torrance. He's had some interesting roles over time. I mean, played in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's
He also played that clean cut priest in Inferno. I think was it Inferno? No, it was Angels and Demons. I think it was.
oh, that title sounds like something I should check out.
Tom Hanks ended up playing, I think, a Tom Langley character that evidently it was different. Both of them were very biblical and very existential, and kind of reminded me of like National Treasure kind of films or whatnot. But he played a clean cut priest and also the protagonist in there. So seeing him all rugged and bearded and kind of a dirtied up man, he's not as clean cut and pretty boy as he once was.
I get it.
So what do you think about this very beginning scene where he wakes up?
Well, I must say, although he is an amazing actor, I really liked him in Star Wars and so on. But the very first time he appeared in Doctor Sleep, I kind of struggled to see him as the same person who I knew as Daddy. I mean, I kind of couldn't imagine. That kid and this adult man being the same person somehow.
At
If
first,
you see what I mean.
At first, I couldn't either, but having seen it a couple of times myself, like I actually somewhat got used to it. I mean, it's still hard to see at times. Because you're so used to this actor in like other roles. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that too. But I mean, he doesn't really resemble the small daddy much. So I really kind of couldn't see it as the same person. If you see what I mean.
I see what you mean. But as the character progressed, what did you think of him?
Well, he was definitely an interesting character. Definitely, in this part of the story, we see him being son of Jack Torrance, going through more or less the same struggles, just with less violence. But yeah, I
Well,
guess he
yeah,
got something from his mother too.
apparently he had gone on a nightly binge and became an alcoholic, and we see that with his waking up next to a naked chick, and he realizes that she's taken his money for the drugs that evidently they got high with, and he starts to take her money when a toddler walks in and says, "Mommy, mommy," and he's kind of like, oh shit, and then apparently Halloran still comes and visits him from time to time. And this was one of those moments. He basically tells him, "Oh, why, Doc? Why you got to take her money?" And he's like, "Well, she took my money to go get the drugs, and the whole thing is kind of okay, Danny. You did drugs with her too. You should at least let her keep whatever money she has, because it doesn't look like she has much to begin with." So
Well, actually, after we discussed that while watching the movie, I went to check it on Wikipedia, and apparently the woman wasn't just passed out, at least as far as it says on Wikipedia. It says she was dead from overdosing on drugs. So
Yes.
that
But in the novel, this is what I found out. Apparently, in the novel, the kid had an uncle, and she had a brother who was very abusive to her and to him, and he ended up beating up the child after Danny had left them. And
wait, I'm sorry. Who had this abusive uncle? I didn't
the
understand.
woman he woke up naked next to,
Oh,
supposedly in the novel, she had this brother who was very abusive, and he abused the kid so much that he killed her, and she in turn killed herself later. But this is after Danny had already left her and shit like that. At that, and Danny in the movie felt this death of the child and the mother. And the thing that he feels guilty, apparently in the novel, is the fact that he could have maybe probably saved her from that in some way, shape, form, but it wasn't really his fault because he took the money. It was going to happen regardless.
yeah, makes sense.
But apparently the child had died from a very bad abusive situation with the brother, and she ended up offing herself because she couldn't handle it.
Ew.
So but that's something that the movie just kind of rolls through, and and that's what we kind of get.
Well,
And
yeah, makes sense. I mean, the movie is already long, and that seems like a very emotion-heavy story. And in order to process it properly, the movie would have had to be even longer.
the other thing I want to say something about is the that pastor dude or that sobriety dude that we meet that's in the movie. Um, uh, Ultimately, once he meets up with his friend Billy, I guess, that he meets in this town, uh, in Tinny Town. We get to meet this sobriety leader dude that evidently has helped Billy through a lot. Well, evidently Danny realizes that he left his watch somewhere on some soap dispenser, and we get a moment of him talking in this office thing that kind of looks like the office that we saw in the Overlook Hotel,
Yeah.
which is in both the novel as the Overlook Hotel, the movie, and the miniseries as the Overlook Hotel. But as we know, in the Stanley Kubrick version, it was actually in fact the Timberlake Lodge. In the miniseries, it was the Stanley Hotel, which it was actually used. In this particular movie, they went back and used the Timberlake Hotel. So,
Oh.
which is later on, which is what we'll get to eventually. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I noticed that office looking much like the one from the first movie. At as far as the story went, it seemingly wasn't supposed to be connected to the Overlook Hotel, so I was
Well,
a bit confused.
apparently the sobriety dude in the novel is in fact young Abra's doctor, and has a little bit more to do in the novel later on with being the connection to her family, whereas this film kind of skated over that, and much of the character of this doctor dude became part of of the character of Billy Freeman, which is um, is his evidently best friend that he ends up having here in this particular movie. What did you think about the character of Billy?
Well, I found him rather sad because of the very undeserved ending he got.
But while he was among the living, what did you think of him?
Well, he seemed cool from what I saw. I don't know what he's like in the novel, but he seemed like an okay character.
Yeah, he was definitely interesting thing because he saw something in Danny that nobody else could see, and he offered. I mean, he offered to pay the first 2 months' rent on the place that he set him up with. So that's like a really cool thing. And at $85, 85. That's cheap, actually. $85 a month. I know of no place that's still $85 a month. I mean,
Well,
our rent here is a little bit over 700. So,
oh my.
so the way I think about it, this is like uh, maybe it's a halfway house. You know, like a halfway house or a government housing that was set up for low income people. So
Oh, mm,
it's very possible that that may be the case, and he put his faith in him, and ultimately led him to this Alcoholics Anonymous group, which he for the next 8 years was part of. Meanwhile, there are two other stories that are happening. I mean, we see. Well, actually, there's a byplot of Danny's that we get to see that evidently happened in between his growing up and whatnot. Evidently, he had a vision of Halloran telling him about his. Well, we get a moment where he talks to him about his dad and how his dad physically abused him, and one day I mean, he died, but he came back, and because his grandmother was the one who showed him what to do about his shining, she gave him this box, this tiny box, and evidently he was able to, you know, take care of his demon at the time. And he showed Danny this box, and he told him to, learn every inch of it, learn the inside, learn the outside of it, because I want you to build one of these in your mind.
oh, yeah,
Because Danny was still being haunted by the woman in room 237. What did you think
yeah.
about that?
Well, it was a pretty creative way to handle the situation. I mean, this is, I think, the first time I saw a concept of someone being able to build a weapon against a paranormal creature inside their own mind and then actually use it against that creature. That was quite interesting.
It was definitely interesting, and I thought it worked with the paranormal aspect of it really extremely well. And the fact that we get to somewhat learn what some of the creatures in this hotel are called eaters of the shining. Well, there are several different probably groups of these people out there, but there is a group that is traveling in caravans or campers, as we see them. Campers and staying in tents. Evidently, these people are In a sense, it seems like they're a little like gypsies.
Well, maybe I didn't think of that.
But in any case, that's what these people kind of remind me of, like a caravan of gypsies, except they considered themselves gods, and they ate these people, this group of which called themselves the True Knot, um, evidently ate people with the Shining, the this magic that well, I'm not even sure if I would call it magic, but some people
Mm,
call it magic, so it could be. But what did you think about this group of the True Knot?
well, I don't know how they are described in the book, but as far as the movie goes, they actually seem fairly well developed. I mean, to me at least, they didn't seem like pure evil. We can also see them having emotions and caring about each other, which was rather interesting to see. That's kind of uncommon among villains in horror movies.
Um, well, yeah, start to see them, the people of the True Knot. In the very beginning, we are introduced to a woman called Rosie the Hat, played by Rebecca Ferguson. She's a red-haired a woman who appears to be the leader or queen of this cult of gods, um, and they, in order to stay alive and live long, they feed on these special people who shine. And unfortunately, it is their way to survive, and they know no other way. So no matter what, they are hungry creatures, and we see that in this film immensely, especially when we see them take little Violet.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm not sure if they eat only people who shine, or I mean their souls or steam, as they call it here. But from what I understood, the people who shine have much more energy and can, they can provide them with much more energy to stay alive.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if they only eat the uh, souls of these shiners either. Well,
Well,
um according to Danny, he said, and I think Halloran also has said that everybody has a little bit of the shining in them. It's just
yeah.
he was told that nobody shined like him.
Mm, yeah, makes sense.
But also, there is this little girl who apparently is able to shine as well, um, who goes by the name of Abra, and she starts to scare her parents with her abilities, and ultimately she begins to reach out to Danny, and apparently she's kind of become a kind of a pen pal to him through this wall of chalkboard that is in his apartment. What do you think about that? How they begin to talk to each other.
Well, that was pretty cool. It also served as how do I say it?
A way of
Uh,
communication.
yeah, but I was going to say as a way to give us a little deja vu from the first movie because we see this red drum thing appear on that wall. uh, Mm.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, and another thing I found interesting is there was this landlady character who, as soon as Dad started to speak to her, she started to ramble about her rules and shit, and I really hate tyrannic people like that. So I kind of found myself thinking, I wonder what she's going to say when she sees what they did with that wall.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that. But ultimately, that becomes their communication piece for later, because ultimately, Abra sees the death of one of the children that the True Knot comes across. Evidently, there's this little kid who can hit a baseball bat hit a baseball every single time on this baseball diamond, and they end up taking him, making him terrified, and they cut into his body, and they basically mutilate him to terrify him into what they called steaming, which was evidently a way for the soul or the shining, this magic that supposedly is inside them, to come out, and they eat this kind of thing. So ultimately, they ended up burying his body inside, and later it kind of becomes, well, at least the glove of the little boy is dug up, and it is a way to find some of the, or at least one particular person of the True Knot, for them to track where they are, so that they can maybe start to fight back, because not only is there a fight on their hands, but Abra has made it so that they have seen her through all of this stuff, and not only that, Abra has been able to get inside Rose the Hat's mind through all of this, and that pretty much scared the shit out of Rose, but also wanted her to you know, she wanted her. She wanted the little girl Abra. She wanted her without a doubt, not just because of her power, but you know, she's got to be able to extinguish that power. The only thing is, she did not count. She did not plan to have Dan evolve, because Danny is like a hidden curveball to her.
Pretty much.
What do you think about Danny as he is evolving towards? Because at first he didn't want to help her. He wanted her to keep her head down, head out of the clouds. Wanted her to do what he was doing, which was, you know, just being. And Halloran came back and told him, "Hey, Doc, you got to help her." And because they have noticed her, and she's another person exactly like you. And you know why? Because she came to you. She came to you for help. Why me? Well, why did I? You just came walking into the hotel one day, and I'm still, still paying the price.
Well, actually, now that you say it that way, it's actually rather thought-provoking. I mean, people nowadays tend to be like why should I do something nice for a stranger if I don't benefit from it in any possible way? While maybe we should think, well, why wouldn't I do something nice if I can?
If it is within your
Although,
power to help another human being, I would suggest to do so. But if you
indeed.
cannot help that person because you're still trying to get yourself out of whatever trouble that you are in, then it's understandable, you know. But if you have like a buck or two in your pocket and might help another person, I would say help that other person if it doesn't if it doesn't hurt you in any way, shape, or form. Just hopefully it's not given to a person who you might regret doing so, because there are those kind of people out there too who will take advantage of you. You know.
Yeah, that's all true. Although, as far as that goes, I personally didn't get the impression that he originally tried to turn her down because he didn't want to help her, but maybe because he knew what he went through because of his shining, and maybe he thought if she stopped right there and stopped exploring her powers, then maybe she would be spared all the traumatic experiences that she would probably be
Well,
put
it
through.
it took him a long time to do what he had to do to quell his demons. And as he had talked to Halloran at the time, he said the last of whatever ghosts that were after him was that guy who said "Great party," isn't it?
Yeah,
And
which is
he locked him up in a box just like that. In fact, he was ready to lock Halloran up in a box when he saw him
almost.
there for a moment.
Yeah,
He had to do a heck of a lot um, to get himself fully away from those creatures from that house. So it was going to take a good talking to Danny from Halloran to convince him to help her out. Because you know he didn't really want to go through the same shit again, you know. But
yeah,
no matter what, he's got to be able to help his own kind, you know.
definitely.
So ultimately, they come up with a plan to trap the those with the true knot. What they didn't plan on was the fact that her father was gonna get killed in the process. But I do like the fact that Danny was like, "You've got to tell your parents what's up," you know, and he did. She did show him what was up, and he finally understood. But for a moment there, you thought that he was gonna call the cops or some shit.
Uh, yeah, actually, that's also a pretty thought-provoking scene when you think of it. People these days, they jump to conclusions easily. They often act on their first instinct. They refuse to hear another person out, and it often leads to someone who doesn't mean any harm receiving a bad treatment. And in this case, we can see that maybe it's not a good thing to do because Abra's father jumped to conclusions about Dan, which and his conclusions were proven wrong eventually. Uh,
And one thing I wanted to say about something that was in the novel, you know, the blonde pusher that was picked up by Rose the Hat. The one who marked the man and said that she was a snake in a white dress.
Yes, yes.
Just remember that when you look in the mirror, I was the snake in the white dress. Well, apparently in the novel she was 30 years old, but in the film she was more like 15.
Yeah, 15 was what they said.
So that was a little bit of a difference. I'm not entirely understanding why they changed her um, entire age that much. But it is a little interesting to learn that she is instead like 15, which is in the movie, but she was older at the in the book. So
Yeah, I don't know why either.
but ultimately, Danny ends up bringing his friend along, Billy, along several times. The first time was to dig up the baseball ball kid, and the second time was this part where we actually have Abra take and show up in the middle of the woods and trick them into thinking that they have her, when in fact it was just a stuffed animal.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And which brings them all into the open for them to be in the line of fire of being able to be shot and killed. And they get to like the second last person, which is the pusher we are. And I'm trying to think of her name. I think she is called Snakebite Andy.
Yes, yes.
She is ultimately shot by Danny, but it takes her a little bit to die. So he's a little bit too late in telling his friend Billy to stay away from her, because she still has the power to control.
Oh, yeah.
And she ultimately tells Billy to go kill himself, and he does. And that's about the time where Crow Daddy has evidently pulled his trick by going to the home of Abra and killing her father and kidnapping her, which ultimately he does not know about Danny. So Danny, because of the things that he's learned that Abra has been able to do, ultimately, after a bit, and being tempted by the drink, but still he throws it on the ground and shit, and he tries the tricks that he's learned from her. The trick of pushing. So he ends up finding where she is by listening to all the voices in his mind, and he finds her in the van. She's been drugged by some drug that evidently disallows her from using her powers in any way, shape, or form. What do you think about this moment?
Well, it was when he kind of possessed her and spoke to the guy through her. What was the guy was named Crow Daddy or something like that.
Crow Daddy.
Yeah, yeah. That was pretty cool, kind of bizarre to see. When I mean, Abra was acting like a decent girl throughout the whole movie, and then you suddenly hear her using words like "fuck" and you realize it's Dan speaking through her. That was pretty cool.
It feels like I'm hungover. It's been quite a few years since I've been hungover. Oh,
Yeah,
oh, yes. I know where we are. I-94. Looks about Massachusetts. By the way, isn't it funny how you forgot to wear your seatbelt?
yeah, that was pretty good.
Oh yeah, and all the while Rose the Hat is sitting cross-legged on top of her vehicle, because she keeps a lot of these uh steams from the power in like these little vials in her camper. And ultimately, after Crow Daddy dies, which she feels every death, which is an excruciating pain to her, she gets mad. She gets really mad. And this is
Yeah,
like after her hand was like almost broken to a fucking a pulp a little bit ago because of the of Abra, because evidently in their minds their minds are more like files. What did you think about that, the whole thing with how she tried to go in her mind and she laid a trap for her in her mind? What did you think about that moment?
it was pretty cool. And this thing with files, yeah, that's an interesting metaphor for a human mind because we all kind of have files like that in our minds. And yeah, when her hand got stuck there, it was rather gruesome.
It kind of trapped her there for a moment, that so that she could go inside her mind, and her mind, according to her, was like a cathedral. So it was, and she was flipping through files in her mind, and that whole scenario where it just flipped her body through the air and back to where her body was, and rolled her off the fucking thing. Every time it seemed like the kid Abra was more powerful than she was.
Mm, yeah.
um, and ultimately, Danny comes up with this theory of bringing them back to the place of his childhood. Oh,
Mm,
thank you. The place of his childhood, which is the Overlook
mm,
Hotel. It's
uh,
a place that scared the crap out of him, and also a place of power that evidently, even though, okay, it is a powerful place and it eats people like them, um, it may have the power to eat Rose the Hat or people like her too. So, what did you think about that whole scenario? What did you think about him going back to the same place?
mm. Actually, that's a very interesting detail that he went back there because before that we see all this subplot of him trying to run away from his demons, to put it that way. But now he goes back to the place where his most traumatic experiences actually took place, which is kind of a metaphorical way to tell us that if we want to be truly free of our demons, we can't do it. We can't break free by running away from them, but by facing them and by fighting them, which is kind of what he does
As,
by.
as Winston Churchill once said, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But after Crow Daddy had died, they decided to go back to the Overlook in Colorado. And this whole object of him waking up the house, I love this part. And the fact that the lights come on each time he comes into a room. And we end up having a moment here where he goes down the same hallway his father did to the gold room, where his father shows up as the bartender. And he calls himself Lloyd, but he definitely looks like his father. And it is played by... he is played by the same kid who played Elliot in E.T.
Yeah, that's...
Trying to think what his name was. Let's see if I can find it here. I know it would be Jack Torrance, the bartender. Henry Thomas. Henry Thomas, that's his name. He played Elliot from E.T. But I thought that he played an interesting Jack Torrance here, because he brings him into the red room just like Delbert Grady, and talks to him that the house it's what was the C word that they used? They were comprehensive or something like that. But
maybe I don't remember exactly.
They wondered why he wanted to help the girl and why it was so important, and the fact that he should just let the lady take care of it. And I liked what they did here. When she finally showed up at the house, and the blood came towards her, and she just kind of smirked at it, and it came into the room where the typewriter sat, and they were at like the foot of the staircase that you saw Wendy Torrance and Jack Torrance at when she was being backed up the staircase.
Yeah. I must say, all those recreated flashbacks from the first movie were really interesting to see.
Oh yeah, there were flashbacks throughout. I mean, the first one we see is of young Danny Torrance, where he's scared of the woman in the shower, and he's still haunting him. Well, the next flashback we see is of him downstairs and near the beach, and Halloran shows up and tells him all about the box and shit. So when he goes back in, he's able to open up this box inside his mind and trap this ghost or whatever the fuck it is. Basically what they are just hungry beings that feed off of these other people, so these special abilities that these people have. And adult Danny realizes this, that he's kept all these people in his mind. It's like there's a reason why he's kept them all in his mind, I mean, as kind of a way for them to stop haunting him, but maybe in a way they were like his way of protecting the little girl by the fact that they're all in. He's not alone in there,
yeah,
and
well,
that's what this Rose the Hat finds out. What do you think about that whole scenario that plays out?
Well, it was pretty good. I mean, on one hand, Danny trapping the ghosts in boxes, it was his only solution. I mean, there was no other way to get rid of them since you can't kill what's already dead. Uh, but then at the same time, preserving them that way served its purpose because in this scene it helped him get rid of Rose.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, I love this scene where the fact that they try to trap her, and um she ends up fighting Danny by axing him a little bit, and then while he's on the floor, she starts to eat his shine, and then she realizes that he's not alone in there, and she's like, "Interesting. What might you be hiding in there?" And he's like, you don't really want to know. And she's like, "Yes, I do." And he's like, "They're hungry."
yeah.
And they all come out of the boxes, and they end up tearing her apart.
Yeah, uh, which was in a way gruesome. I mean, it wasn't gory or anything like that, but since we know what steam means to those people, then seeing her disintegrate into that steam was kind of terrifying in its own way.
And ultimately, they end up turning on him and possessing him against the little girl Abra. Except little Abra knows one thing better, that Danny is still inside there, and that's why it's kind of interesting. This is where the film kind of adapts some of the words from the miniseries. This whole
Oh,
idea of unmasking.
Oh yeah, I actually noticed quite several references to the miniseries, which were actually probably references to the first novel, since the movies was based on a novel that was a sequel to the first novel, so it's not surprising there would be references to it.
And here we are back at the whole Henry Thomas, Jack Torrance bartender scene, where he basically is able to tell his father in his own way about what happened to them, where they went afterwards, and why his mother couldn't look at him because she saw bits and pieces of her husband Jack in him. So when she died, it was when he was 20 years old. He was able to tell his father about this experience and get it off his chest, even though it was painful. It was more painful than the drink that would have taken him back 8 years.
Mm, yeah. And that was another interesting scene where we got to see some references to the first story, well, first book or mini series, which references some things that weren't in the first movie, like Jack saying, take your medicine, damn pop, and some phrases like that
Yeah, he
that
didn't
he
say
used
any of
in.
that. He didn't say any of that in the movie, but he said things like that in the miniseries. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like the director took elements of the first film and elements of the second film and elements from the book and mixed them together.
Mm,
So to me, I feel like the ending is plausible for Abra to begin her story. I
hmm.
mean, I think in this particular world, there is only room for one person in to have like the power of this shining that she seems to have. At least one person that has more power than anyone else. You know.
Well, I don't know. In the novel, they both stayed alive, right?
Well, in the novel, she is the well in the novel she does stay alive, and and I think Danny does ultimately perish in the novel. So it did happen. It just happened a little differently, and I don't. What you read about the ending of the novel? What was the ending of the novel
Uh,
supposed to be?
well, actually, I didn't end up reading it in detail, but I think I did read somewhere that Danny survives in the novel. But now that you say it, I'm not sure. Maybe I should check it out.
It would definitely be interesting to see what happened in the novel, because I didn't entirely read the novel. I heard another's opinion about the novel and some of the differences between. And the biggest thing that I have against what he said is that, well, he said that he doesn't understand why that dude that is the leader of this Alcoholics Anonymous group, why that scene was even there, because he was supposedly the connection to Abra and her family later on, her being her doctor and all that jazz, and he just didn't understand. Well, I think the whole reason why that was there was because when they were in his office talking about the whole watch business, that office looks exactly like the one that his father had an interview in with, and this is before he even starts out as the so-called Doctor Sleep, and that's where we get to the whole thing that we somewhat missed talking about, is the fact that Danny goes from adult Danny goes from working on the train in Teeny Town, which is a little life-sized town that looks exactly like the town around it, to working in a hospital and like being a janitor on a shift. But he ends up being this person that is evidently there at the right time at the right place when someone is about to die, to show them that there is a better place afterwards, and maybe show them a little bit about who they're going to meet in the afterlife, quite possibly, and to
Yeah.
give them their minds a sort of peace, before they kick the bucket.
Yeah.
And that
Mm,
is, in a sense, why he is called Doctor Sleep, because he puts them to sleep, gives them their final resting place. And this happens
it,
a couple of times. From what I understand, it happens more so in the novel, but we only get to see like a couple of patients. And you notice that the cat, what was his name?
Asriel.
Yeah, Asriel. Asriel is kind of a character too in here, isn't she?
Yeah.
She ends up going into the rooms in which people are going to die, and tells him like kind of like the time to come in, almost like his guide to who's next. But she also goes into the room ahead of time when Halloran shows up. So
Uh, Indeed. Well, funnily enough, I think Asriel is actually in some mythologies. I forgot in which ones, but I think Asriel is the angel of death. I learned that in this TV show Lucifer that I like.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I could definitely see that.
mm, yeah,
But
so it's an interesting thing that they named this cat. Well, actually, I don't know if they named the cat after the angel or after the cat from the Smurfs.
so ultimately, in the end, we get this whole thing where Danny remembers who he is, and he ends up telling Abra to get out and go. He's got to finish everything. Somebody's got to be able to close the door, the mental door, so to speak, of everything that has happened. So he ends up going down to the boiler room and basically finishing up business there before the whole darn thing explodes. Because evidently he made one trip down there before he started up the whole business with the lady, and that's one thing that the ghost in which who possessed adult Danny did not realize or pay attention to. Which is why the chapter was called That Which Was Forgotten.
Oh, makes sense.
So I like the fact that this was done in chapters, kind of like a novel in a sense too. It gave us a bit of a sense that it was telling us which part was beginning and which part was ending, and I thought that the film was I thought that the film was great. I mean, I thought it was a great ending myself because of the whole fact that this is how the original. Let's say that the miniseries didn't even happen, and the original Shining was all that there was. I think
Uh,
that's what Mike Flanagan was kind of doing, but still using some of both, and then mixed a bit of the novel, which made Stephen King happy in the end. So, if you look it up, you'll actually find out that Stephen King was impressed with this ending, even though he did the novel differently. Um, he
well,
liked it.
I believe you, but then again, I find it a little bit strange that on one hand he was upset at Kubrick for altering his story. Well, he was upset for understandable reasons, but then at the same time, this new guy changes his story as well, and he likes that.
Well,
While he hated it the first time it was done.
in a sense, I like how this film kind of tied in a few other novels of Stephen King's too. Um, there was a moment where Halloran said something like "ka." I don't know,
Uh,
Ka. Um, he said that in the movie. Well, if you know anything about Stephen King, the movie Desperation.
Uh, I think I haven't seen it. I'm sorry.
Well, there is a god that is called Ka or Ka Tet, which I thought that was an interesting way of saying something that may be
Hmm.
King related. Um, and I thought that was an interesting word to say when I know where it was said in first.
Yeah, actually, that is interesting. I like to do kind of similar things in my writing.
He meant karma, but he said ka, which was a little different because that is from Desperation, or also from the book Regulators as well, because Regulators and the Regulators and Desperation are basically two different novels, but they use the same characters.
Yeah, actually, I heard once that allegedly all Stephen King's novels take place in the same universe, so that would kind of
In fact,
explain it.
there's a book that was put together by a couple of editors called the Stephen King Universe, where they actually connected all of the Stephen King stories and novels and movies all together in one kit and caboodle. And they had a theory that every single book, short story, a novel, whatever, was all connected in some way, shape, or form. And they basically wrapped it around the Dark Tower series being the fulcrum of the Stephen King universe. And that's what they called it, the Stephen King universe. And I like the fact that in the end, Abra said something to the effect that she had been talking to Danny, to her mother, and she said that he had moved on, and so had her father. Well, that was a way of saying um, saying something that he's said in some other novels of his. In some of the worlds, especially Dark Tower, Roland Deschain was a man who had, or actually who lived in a world that had moved on.
Oh,
And it was interesting the way that she said it. And the thing is he was the last gunslinger of his time. His world had moved on, but he had not. He stayed the same. So
that
Stephen King
sounds.
has used those words "move on" in several different novels. So, and oftentimes he refers to some of the worlds as midworld, which kind of reminds me of like Valhalla and the Viking stuff with their history, and Lord of the Rings with their with the midworld stuff. The Middle Earth. You know, and
Yeah.
Middle Earth is kind of like the world that moved on.
Interesting point.
But in any case, let us go into our favorite scenes of this film. What do you think was your favorite scene of this?
Well, probably when they came to the Overlook Hotel and when we saw all these flashbacks from the first movie, how they were recreated with the new actors, that was really impressive because I remember when I saw this first scene in the movie of the little Danny on his bicycle, and it really looked like a scene from the original The Shining. But then you see it's a new kid, and it's really impressive how they managed to recreate that to stay true to the original, but do it with these new actors. And then they did it again with many other things from the first movie when they came to the hotel and they tied it all into the new story. That was really impressive to me, at least.
I think so. But I also like the second time that the little girl Abra goes up against Rose the Hat, where she ends up trapping her in her mind and going through her files and breaking her like entire hand and sending her body or soul back to her body in such a way that made it roll off her fucking RV.
Definitely.
And I like the end where where little Abra and the part where um, Danny ends up possessing her and making that Crow Daddy dude like crash into the fucking tree, and
Oh yeah,
that was awesome. And then I like the ending, like I was starting to say, where she ended up going into to the bathroom, and you saw the lady in the background. She was the ghost or creature from the hotel, and she had a look on her face like, "Oh shit, what are you gonna do?" You know.
a good point. Somehow I didn't notice
That
her
ghost
facial
looked
expression.
that creature looked worried, like, oh shit, she's coming here. Oh my god, not again.
Yeah, well, that ghost was pretty nasty.
What did you think about the special effects?
They were definitely pretty good.
I thought they
Uh,
were pretty good too. I mean, I liked the fact that they tilted the room like at moments when they went and did their shining shit, and the fact that we learned that there were different kinds of shiners. People who could push. You know, apparently there were people who could evidently look for long distances into the minds of others.
yeah.
And and Abra apparently looked all the way across at her when she was like 1,500 miles away.
Mm, it, it did. Yeah, now that I think about it, we never saw Dad being able to do that. Well, okay, he did communicate with Abra that way.
And I think another thing was how the hell were they able to recreate some of these scenes to make us feel like we were in the same dimension of the 1980s film The Shining? I mean,
Well, that
I may hate The Shining for my different reasons, but that doesn't mean that I don't think it is in its own self like a sort of work of art.
Uh, yeah, well, that's what I've been trying to say. That when we see all these flashbacks from the first movie, it really, in spite of this one having different actors playing roles from the original, the way they did it was really remarkably consistent with the original.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Let's see who else. Stephen. Let's see. Okay, going. Okay. So the Newton brothers are the ones who did the music behind this particular film, and they were behind a movie called Extinction, The Haunting of Bly Manor, Avengers, Infinity War. They were somewhat behind that stuff. The Grudge in 2020, Mary,
Ooh,
Escape Plan 2. Let's see, The Haunted. They were behind the movie The Gerald's Game, which is the first. I think it was the first Stephen King adaptation that Michael Flanagan had done, and I thought he did really good there. He did. They did some of the music behind Blood in the Water, Amateur Night, Urge, Before I Awake, Hush, The Runner, Vendetta, Chloe and Theo, Careful What You Wish For, See No Evil 2, Catch Hell. Let's see, Oculus, Dungeons and Dragons, The Book of Vile Darkness.
ooh.
Let's see. Yeah, and Zombies. I remember that movie.
Ooh,
Oh, that was
nice.
an interesting movie, but in any case, but yeah, that's pretty much the music behind it. But we get some of the similar music that we heard from The Shining.
Oh yeah, I noticed that,
in the very
especially.
beginning, and in the uh, hotel when he's about to wake it up.
Oh yeah. Uh, Actually, that very beginning when the Warner Bros. Logo appears and that music we hear there, I was wondering where is that familiar from? But yeah, I forgot it was actually in the first Shining movie.
Yep. Dun, 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 dun. And I just recently rewatched The Clockwork Orange, and I gotta say that that film was directed by Stanley Kubrick as well. Some of the music in there definitely reminded me of the Shining music. I know you haven't seen the film, but it definitely reminded me a lot of the music here. So
Ooh.
and the music in The Shining. So other than that, do you have anything else to say about this film?
Well, one thing I would like to say, which I kind of wanted to say last time when we were discussing the mini series, this movie, if it is true to the novel, it kind of debunks a theory I had about the ending of the mini series. At the end of the mini series, we see that Danny grew up to be the person we saw earlier as his supposedly imaginary friend Tony, which meant that Tony was his future self.
Correct.
But then, when Danny looks like Tony, then the supposedly imaginary friend he sees is no longer Tony, but Jack, his father, which kind of made me think as the ending is kind of ambiguous both in the mini-series and in the first movie, and it kind of leaves things up to interpretation, and this kind of made me think that maybe the first story was subtly trying to say that maybe Jack and Danny were different incarnations of the same person, like that he constantly is reborn and goes into that hotel and dies there and so on. It constantly happens to him over and over again, just with different names and so on. But if Doctor Sleep is true to the novel, then that debunks my theory.
It's mostly true to the novel, except for the ending. I mean, it combines a lot of the people who were in the novel together into less people than there were in the novel. I mean, there were a few more characters, evidently Billy is a bit of both the doctor dude and apparently another character called Casey, which apparently um, there were reasons why they were cut out and like combined, you know, to get together to be able to tell you the story in about as little as time as possible. You know, I mean, of course there were going to be things that were probably going to be changed for the benefit of putting it and adapting it to film, because an adaptation from a novel is definitely different than an adaptation of a book. You know, and well, adaptation of a movie from a novel is going to be always different, at least in some way, shape, or form. It just depends on how different, you know. And the thing is, Stanley Kubrick changed it and butchered it. So that is why we get the ending here in Doctor Sleep, because even though, yeah, King already did it in the miniseries.
Yeah.
it was still another slap to Stanley Kubrick and finalizing the whole story of Danny and having a conclusion, you know, that happened the way that Stephen King wanted it to you know.
Yeah.
He helped him have his ending.
Yeah, I just kind of not happy that Danny's character ended that way, especially since it's
Well,
not in the novel, and generally I'm not very into tragic
in
endings,
a sense,
especially when.
he's still able to be with Abra in the end, anyways. Remember, he showed up at
In a way, yeah.
so. Though he died, his spirit didn't. It was released from the house by her because of the ending happening the way it did, and he ultimately like became her constant person that she could go to from time to time, just like Halloran was his.
Yeah.
And ultimately, right before the end, he was able to look his mother in the eyes, and she in his.
Oh, it did.
So that was kind of a cool touch too. So, in any case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to our psychobabble on this entire series of film. And that has ended our Shining discussions, at least for now. If there is ever an adaptation, I'm sure we'll be able to possibly discuss it in the future. So,
Probably.
so thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And I have just two words: shine on.
Yeah, shine on.